Hey guys, this is the Business Math A Unit 6 Asynchronous Recording. Today we're going to take a look at two things from Lesson 26. We're going to take a look at computing health insurance premiums, and we're also going to take a look at practicing computing out-of-pocket expenses for medical care. So let's get started. There are just two definitions I really want us to focus on for the sake of this video. Now there are several more definitions that will be introduced in Lesson 26, but these two are my focus. So first, a copayment is a predetermined flat rate that you pay for a particular health care service. Now, a copayment is something that you pay when you do have health insurance. It's a cost associated with health insurance. So, for example, maybe I go to my doctor and I don't have to pay anything, that's completely covered by my insurance. But if I go to see a specialist, maybe for some particular problem, maybe the specialist visit has a copayment of, I don't know, $30. So every time I go to this specialist, I have to pay $30. And it's just a flat rate for those visits, and my insurance covers the rest. Again, a predetermined flat fee that you pay for a particular health service. So you would be aware of this fee before going to see the doctor. And then there's a deductible. This is another cost associated with health insurance. This is the amount of money you must pay each year before your insurance company starts paying. This is for certain things. So for example, there are certain preventative visits that are probably going to be covered from your insurance. For example, I mentioned just a doctor's visits. For example, in the insurance plan that I have, I think I get like 2 or 3 doctor visit checkups per year that I can go to, and I don't pay anything. I don't have to reach a deductible for that. But for other things, like if I had to get a particular procedure done, things like that, there's going to be a deductible, and it's usually depending on how sophisticated of an insurance plan it is. The deductible could be a couple $100s, it could be a couple $1,000s, and you pick plans kind of based on what you know about your own health, and we won't get into that. But let's say I have a deductible of $1,000 for costs not part of that preventative care, such as like um, preliminary doctor's visits and blood work and things. For those costs not covered by that stuff, I'm going to have to pay out of pocket all the way up till I meet my deductible of $1,000. But after my deductible, my insurance kicks in and will cover hopefully most, if not all, of those expenses. There's one other definition not mentioned, which is in-network costs versus out-of-network costs. And this has to do with who your insurance provider is and who you're going to see for your service. So let's say, for example, that I'm not feeling well, I want to go to the doctor, and I have a particular health insurance company that provides my health insurance. Let's say that the nearest doctor near me is Dr. A, okay? So I'm not feeling well, I look on Google and I find a doctor's office. And I see that Dr. A is nearby. But Dr. A, I call them and I ask them if they have a contract with my health insurance provider, and they say no, that it would be out of network. And then I say okay, and I go back to Google and I search around, and then I find this other doctor I'll call Dr. B. And this person is a little further away, but when I ask them if they have a contract with my provider, they say yes, they're in network. So even though Dr. B is a couple miles further, this is the guy or the gal that I should go to. And here's why. If they are in network, it's basically like saying their costs will be lower. Okay, so they have worked out a plan with your particular insurance people. Their in-network costs are going to be lower. Anytime you go out of network, you will absolutely be paying more money. And depending on how your insurance works, it could affect kind of the pool of people that you have insurance with. For example, if you have insurance through an employer, the way they calculate all of your health premiums, which is another vocab word that you'll have to review if you don't remember, is kind of based on some analysis of the costs that you guys accrue for that company over the year. So anyway, the important thing to remember is that in-network means that they do have some sort of contract in place with your health insurance provider, and you're going to pay less, and you'll probably pay way less. If you go to a doctor that is out of network, you're going to pay more, probably a lot more. Okay, now let's get into just a couple examples. We're still kind of warming up towards the main topic that I want for us to work on today. And before we get there, I just want to practice a little bit with annual contributions. So for example, let's say that we have someone, Guadalupe, employed at Johnson & Company, and she has a membership in her company's health insurance program. The annual premium is $4,680. Guadalupe's employer pays 75% of the total cost, and her contribution is deducted from her paycheck. So what's her annual contribution? Now, I mentioned I mentioned the word premium in the last slide, and I encourage you to look it up. But put briefly, the premium is just the cost of that membership. So they said she has a membership in her company's health insurance program. So that cost of being a member of that insurance plan, getting the benefits of what that insurance company offers for your particular plan. So premium is just a cost that you have to pay. Okay. In the same way, if I buy a car, I have to make car payments every month. The premium that you pay are the costs associated with being someone who has health insurance. Okay. So what is her annual contribution? So annually, we're saying it costs $4,680 for this plan for Guadalupe. So that's the total cost per year, but her employer is paying 75% of the cost. So if they're paying 75%, we need to find what percent she's paying. So if they're paying 75, you can probably quickly compute that that means that she must be contributing 25% of the total cost, right? She's paying the rest. This amount of money has to be paid between her and her employer. So they're picking up 75% of it. She picks up the other 25%. So from here, if we know that annually Guadalupe is paying 25% of her annual premium, then we just need to find 25% of that number. So 25% of $4,680 is $1,170. So her annual contribution is $1,170. Now, sometimes they might ask you for something slightly different, and in this example we're given a similar scenario, but they end by asking us how much is deducted from a semi-monthly paycheck. So in the last slide we did an example where we were looking at annual cost. Guadalupe was paying about $1,100 annually. In this case we're asking what's happening per paycheck. So Peyton is a florist. She has medical coverage. The annual premium is $8,500. The company pays 80%. So how much does she have deducted? So we do this the same way. So if the company is paying 80% of that $8,500, then that means that Peyton is paying 20%. 20% of what? 20% of the annual premium of $8,500. So what's 20% of $8,500? $1,700. Now, this is the employee's annual contribution. This is what Peyton is paying per year, okay? This contribution is annual. Peyton is paying $1,700 per year. Remember, this number is 20% of $8,500, which $8,500 is the annual premium, okay? So her portion that Peyton has to pay of the annual premium is $1,700. However, the question asked us what she's getting deducted from her semi-monthly paycheck. What does semi-monthly mean? Remember, semi-monthly is twice a month, so there are 24 semi-months in a year, right? If you get paid twice a month, you get paid 24 times a year, which means that she is paying off the $1,700 contribution over the course of 24 paychecks. So, what's 1,700 divided by 24? That will tell us what is getting withdrawn from each paycheck. So she is contributing $70.83 per paycheck. Okay, so step 1 and step 2 were just like what we did in the last example. We got to this point where we knew what her annual contribution was. And then they asked, if she's being paid on a semi-monthly basis, what's the deduction per paycheck? So you have to divide by the number of paychecks per year, right? To go from annual to semi-monthly. And you would do a similar thing, not all employees and not all examples will be semi-monthly. So you need to be able to do this for bi-weekly, which would be 26 times a year, or weekly, or quarterly, or whatever it is, right? So if you don't remember the numbers associated with each of those terms, I do have that in the equation cheat sheet. I think it's in lesson 1 or 2 if you need a refresher. So we'll end with a quick introduction to the next section. We're going to be practicing figuring out what amount is paid by a patient for something. Now, in the last 2 examples, we were just looking at the amount that they're paying just to have that coverage, that health insurance. In this case, we're going to be looking at people who had to use their insurance to get a ton of stuff. So people that we're going to be looking at hospital visits and specialty visits and physical therapy and all this stuff. This is stuff that this person is paying on top of those premiums that we were calculating in the last couple of slides, okay? Now, really, really, really important. When we calculate the total amount paid by a patient, it's going to include a couple things. Their deductible, which we discussed in the vocabulary slide, co-payments, which we also discussed, co-insurance amount. You can kind of loop those in together. So co-payment, co-insurance amount is basically the same thing. It's just in one question they might call it a co-payment, and in another question they might call it co-insurance. But those two are the same. And then hospital charges. Now the trick is that in these questions, as you'll see in the next video, they will frequently very specifically tell you information about co-payments or co-insurance, and they'll tell you information about hospital charges. But they won't explicitly talk about the deductible because it's assumed that you paid this, right? We know that no matter what, if this person is going and getting all these visits and all these checkups and whatever else, they must have met their deductible, meaning they must have paid whatever their deductible amount is. With the other stuff, we don't know that it happened unless they tell us. Like, we don't know the number of physician visits. We don't know about the specialty visits or physical therapy unless it's given to us. But deductible is kind of a universal thing that we can assume if this person has had so many visits and procedures, they must have paid their deductible. This is the number one thing students forget to include when they use this equation. So it's really important that you remember to include deductible in your calculations. And that's why I'm ending this video on this exact slide, because I really want you to write this down and remember it. All right, let's proceed to the next video.